Okay, and just in terms of the format of today, I will be speaking for about 15 or 20 minutes. It is very much a series of personal perspectives on Scottish higher education, and then we're going to move into sort of a more of a discursive workshop mode where you'll be having about half an hour or so at your tables to reflect on the points which I raise and think about what that might mean for the university. And then we'll have a sort of a short wrap up. And if I can give you all as well another date for your diary, is that during term time we expect these seminars to be run on a monthly basis, but we won't run any in July and August, but the next one will be on Wednesday the 4th of September, and the idea is that they're going to run from 12 till 2 on the first Wednesday of each month. And I am looking for volunteers, so I may need to come and speak nicely to some of you. Okay. For those of you who don't know my background, I suppose originally I was a chemist, solid state inorganic chemistry, worked at Aberdeen and St Andrews, and then some time in the US, and then I moved to the QAA in Scotland. Spent a couple of years supporting what was then the new National Enhancement Themes 2003-2005. Had a number of years at the Higher Education Academy, supporting our particular work in Scotland, but also had a UK role for our research and policy team. And as I say, the purpose of my presentation today, and I'm sorry, I'm going to read the presentation, which I'll also make available after the talk, but I think it's important that I sort of try and keep this bit quite formal. So that's not my normal style, but it's how I'd like to run today. So as I say, the purpose of the presentation is to try and stimulate some debate and discussion. As I've said, the views are very much my views. They don't necessarily represent those of Abertay, nor do they indeed represent the views of my former employer at the Higher Education Academy. But I would like to think that they've been informed by the sort of numerous discussions and engagements I've had with sort of key actors in the Scottish sector over recent years, including senior managers in universities with strategic responsibility for learning and teaching, non-HEI stakeholders, policymakers, academic staff and student representatives. And as I say, I'm very grateful to colleagues for their time, their support and critical debate and challenge. 2013 marks 10 years of the formal implementation of Scotland's distinctive enhancement-led approach to quality and the so-called Quality Enhancement Framework. This Quality Enhancement Framework was developed through a unique partnership of QAA Scotland, the universities, the Scottish Funding Council and the student body. It's proven extremely successful, and at the time of its inception was seen as the internationally leading approach to quality in higher education. And during the last intervening decade, the framework and all its constituent parts have significantly developed and matured. Now obviously it's not going to be possible to adequately critique the QEF in this presentation. However, the enhancement-led approach to quality is a given principle of Scottish higher education, and it is against this that much of the following key issues facing the Scottish sector over the coming years will be considered. As you probably know, this constitutional referendum around Scottish independence will take place on the 18th of September 2014. And regardless of the result of the vote, there are a number of likelihoods and uncertainties for Scottish higher education in 2016-18. I'm sure a number of you will have heard of Curriculum for Excellence, and I hazard a guess that that may have been as a parent as much as in your role in the university. School pupils are right now entering the senior phase, year 3, of Curriculum for Excellence. And the first entrance to Scottish universities for pupils who will have gone right through the new system will be in 2016-17. So far, the emphasis on national level discussions have really been focused on admissions-related issues. But what about the learning and teaching implications? Curriculum for Excellence places much greater emphasis on developing learners' attributes and capabilities and less perhaps on discipline-specific specialisation. This also allows for greater flexibility, for example, schools and staff in developing curricula, and also for pupils' pace of learning, and a shift towards learning outcomes. In other words, it shows quite a lot of similarities towards a higher education type of ethos or model for pedagogy. So if we assume that Curriculum for Excellence realises its vision, it is likely that school pupils will have been exposed to much more problem-based, interdisciplinary learning and ought to be more confident and self-directed. What does this mean for higher education, and particularly our first-year curriculum design and delivery? And will the impact of Curriculum for Excellence really depend on the discipline and/or our feeder schools? What about the gold standard of Scottish higher education, the so-called four-year degree? SCQF Level 7 is currently provided by schools, colleges and universities. And while there is no suggestion that the four-year degree will cease to exist, there are signs that less students will undertake such so-called traditional degrees in the future. Furthermore, boundaries in traditional delivery of certain qualifications between the sectors are blurring. For example, you may have heard of Glasgow Caledonian University's new Advanced Hires Hub, which will allow school pupils to undertake advanced hires in a university setting. The initiative is aimed at supporting widening access to higher education, enriching local provision, as there is a deficiency of advanced higher provision in schools in the city centre. At Abertay and several other Scottish institutions, there is an increasing amount of degree provision being delivered in partner colleges by staff who are associate lecturers of the validating university. Similarly, we have a number of Scottish Funding Council funded associate students who are guaranteed articulation upon successful completion of the college part of their studies. And Abertay is hosting a workshop on our new associate student scheme tomorrow, led by June Leishman. In another institution not very far away from here, suitably qualified applicants are now being strongly encouraged to start directly in year 2, whereas in the past the expectation would have been that all school leavers, including our UK students, would start the degree programme in year 1. From my discussions, I would say that the evidence suggests that the traditional four-year degree is probably strongest in Scotland's ancient universities, but that elsewhere in the sector, institutions are developing a range of alternative pathways for undergraduate degrees. And here are some issues that I would like you to think about. To what extent are HN courses increasingly being seen as pre-university stepping stone qualifications by students, rather than qualifications in their own right? Taking that one step further, is it possible that Scottish foundation degrees are on the cards, which would allow smoother 2+2 transition and progression from college to university, and have a potentially positive impact on student retention and attainment? Alternatively, how about developing a distinctive Abertay first year that might have a stronger interdisciplinary emphasis, provide students with greater breadth, and a solid foundation at the start of their university education? I know that CCAM is already working on this, with a new first and second year curriculum being offered to entrants for the start of this coming academic year. What are the opportunities and challenges afforded by so-called accelerated or fast-track degrees, particularly for vocational subjects? And that leads on quite neatly to the next topic, which is truly flexible learner journeys. To date, most discussion around flexible learner journeys has focused upon a fairly linear progression model: school, university, school, college, university work, or variations thereof. So how might the SCQF be capitalised on to create truly flexible learner journeys and ultimately promote lifelong learning? Imagine a world where the funding model was based on credit rather than years of study. Learners could take bite-sized chunk of higher education, dip in and out of education, and move between institutions, effectively taking a degree by individualised portfolio. The ultimate blended approach? Current models of retention and progression would be redundant overnight. What is the potential impact of the so-called MOOCs for the Scottish sector, particularly for part-time, rural-based, work-based, and of course international learners? And what are the quality considerations in terms of assurance and enhancement? How do the general public and employers view such flexible degree pathways? And are there issues of parity in esteem, for example? The changing Scottish education landscape. I think this is taken near Peebles, actually. Scottish education landscape is in the midst of significant change through college regionalisation. There are now 2 institutions in Scotland offering all levels of post-compulsory education, and there is a significant growth in collaborative college-university ventures, enabled by Scottish Government policy drivers and funding incentives. Scotland's new colleges are major providers of higher education and are likely to become bigger players in the higher education field in the future. Just to give you an idea, the City of Glasgow College has the same number of higher education students as Heriot-Watt and the University of St Andrews combined. Interestingly, and in stark contrast to England, private providers are not being encouraged in Scotland, although there are organisations such as Navitas who have Scottish university partners. It is possible, however, that a limited number of specialist private providers specialising in vocational professional education may emerge in Scotland in the next 5 years. And as higher education explodes in other parts of the globe, is it possible that transnational education could take on a completely different angle in years to come? For example, the MIT or Global Community College model. Unlikely, but are these or variations thereof completely outwith the realms of possibility? What other changes to the sector might occur? How might the Scottish university and college sector look in 3 to 5 years' time? And again, what are the implications for quality and standards? Now, a number of you may remember that Alex Salmond famously stated in 2011 that the rocks will melt with the sun before I allow tuition fees to be imposed on Scottish students, up front or back door. Now, the Scottish Government has, of course, publicly committed to publicly funding post-compulsory education, but it is very much on a something-for-something basis. SFC introduced outcome agreements in 2012, and these have been negotiated individually between institutions and the Funding Council, and I think it's fair to say that they are a source of tension and debate in the sector, and the relationship between universities, funders and government have all changed. So to what extent are outcome agreements an opportunity or a threat to Scotland's approach to enhancement? Could outcome agreements even evolve into becoming the main driver for enhancement in the sector in years to come? And if so, what would be the potential consequences? So, next one, collaboration versus competition. Are these two ethos completely distinct, or are they indeed compatible in an enhancement-led approach to quality? It's quite interesting when you sort of reflect and contrast and compare the distinctive approaches to quality enhancement over the last 10 years in Scotland and England. Scotland's approach has been founded on partnership, collaborative working, whereas in England it's been much more a competitive approach with so-called centres of excellence for teaching and learning, national teaching fellowship schemes, or FDTL. In Scotland, however, there are signs that SFC is increasingly funding selective, collaborative projects rather than sector-wide initiatives. And if we take the funding model for Learning to Work 1 and 2 employability initiatives, you'll see that they are completely different. Now I want to sort of finish this part of my presentation by considering the increased professionalisation of teaching in Scottish HE. Now I know you can't read the slides, that's fine. What I want to say here is that there is a significant impetus in the Scottish sector for more holistic approaches to staff development and tying it in with professional recognition and reward processes such as promotion. The UK Professional Standards Framework for Teaching and Supporting Learning, or so-called UK PSF, is focused specifically on teaching. But an increasing number of institutions in Scotland are looking at developing CPD for academic practice. And the sector has embraced student-centred learning. Indeed, that's where these pictures have come from, just from a search on the web. But it's been markedly sluggish in developing a similar approach to staff development. And so what I would like to do is I would like to advocate the notion of staff-centred professional development, an individualised portfolio type approach which would support individuals' particular needs rather than offering staff a generic one-size-fits-all solution. And I believe that this approach offers a number of potentially attractive advantages, including flexibility, efficiency and effectiveness of resource, promoting interinstitutional collaboration, increasing staff engagement, and generally an overall greater positive impact on student learning. And so I believe that this model, or a variation thereof, could offer the university significant added value and a range of exciting new opportunities. So in conclusion, there are without doubt many more issues, challenges and opportunities for the Scottish sector over the coming years. And I know I haven't been able to do justice to all of the above, but I'm hoping that I will at least have been able to stimulate some reflection and some thought in our questioning. I do believe that Abertay is in a strong position to meet the challenges it will face, and we've heard from Steve already about his thoughts and the principles, that they are definitely encouraging us to think, as it were, more broadly and fundamentally about how we might take things forward. So I think before sort of moving into questions and answers, if I could just thank you all for listening and look forward to our discussions from now on. Thank you.